All right. Hello. Happy Wednesday. It's Wild Hair Wednesday, although my hair's kind of got it together. But whenever I used to do Facebook Lives on Wednesday, I always called it Wild Hair Wednesday. So I'm glad you are here. I'm glad you found your way here. I've been changing over my email platform. And I think I'm going to have to change back because this new platform is just not working out well. So, anyway, I feel like there's just frequently a lot of confusion, at least for me, about getting emails out to folks. So, whenever folks come, I'm always like, yay, it worked. So, I'm glad you're here. I hope you've had a great holiday season. I love this season. It's sad when it comes to an end, and then all I have to look forward to is summer. That's such a dramatic thing to say, but I do enjoy this season. So I'm glad you found your way here. I hope you're going to find this information helpful. Please make sure if you have questions, you will need to put them in the Q&A box, and I will do my best to answer them as we go. If not, there should be plenty of time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions. I'm also checking email to make sure nobody's emailing me that they're having a hard time getting in. Um, so yeah, if you have any questions about the material as we go, I definitely want you to put that in the question and answer box, and I will make sure to get to it at the end of the webinar. Lastly, this is going to be interactive. I am going to have you, I mean, this is goal setting, which I love. It's one of my favorite things to teach and to talk about and work with clients on. But I do want you to, one, feel free to ask questions about that. And if you need to come on and we coach about it in the end, that's totally fine too. And that's available. So don't hesitate to ask questions so you can get clear. But two, I jokingly, I sort of mean it, but it's, clearly you can write in Sharpie right now and throw it away. But I always say, like, these plans, when we are making plans for goals, we should be writing in pencil when we're making plans. Write in pencil. I mean, it's nice to erase and to like get a clearer pattern about how you're going to get a clearer plan, I guess, as you get more information and as you think them through more, you want to be able to erase and adjust the plans that you're making. But also, I very, very, very strongly encourage you to think about a plan, put a lot of thought into it, make it well thought out, and then I want you to sleep on it. Do not write anything in Sharpie. That's the joke. Like, write it in pencil first and then wake up in the morning. And if you're still committed to it, if you're still a total hell yes, if you still are like, yes, this is what I want and this is the way I want to do it, if that is still there for you, at that point, write it in Sharpie there. Don't start out writing it as a written in Sharpie, permanent magic marker, written in stone thing. Allow it to be fluid while you're planning it and while you're planning the goals. It's just going to make it a lot more meaningful. I think nothing is more defeating than committing to a plan or believing that we have committed to a plan and then realizing like that was a poorly made plan, or actually I just am not as into it. I was taken away on a moment, on a wave of excitement, and I made this commitment and then I didn't do it because I actually didn't want the thing that I committed to. Okay. I think that that is one of the it just really it degrades our relationship with ourselves and our relationship with ourselves and our ability to create the things that we're wanting to create. So that's what I want to start with that today as we're moving through this. All right, I'm going to share my slides so that everybody can see them. Nobody emailed me in the first 5 minutes, so I'm assuming everybody has gotten in. Um, I'm going to be able to turn that off. So here comes my slides. Again, I have the question and answer box open. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to type something in there. And again, I'll answer it as we go. But if I do find that that's something that we need to postpone until the end of the webinar, I will make sure that I come back to any questions. So we're going to be talking about a lot today. We're going to be talking about goal setting, and we're going to talk about lab evaluation and kind of just data collection. How do I look at blood sugars? What labs do my doctor look at? What maybe what labs my doctor's recommended that I get tested? Do I really need to get them tested? All of those things, we're going to be talking about those today. Part of it is there are some evaluations, some information that you can get at home. You don't need to go to the doctor. That's going to be what you're going to use to monitor your changes. Okay. So part of it's happening there, but also you need to understand what your doctor is offering to you and what they mean by it. And then sometimes you need to come to your doctor and I want these labs done. I want to know what these numbers are because they're important to my metabolic health and I need your help getting them. So and again, the beginning of the year, lots of people are getting their yearly physicals done. And I think that that's great and wonderful. You're going to want to go into your doctor prepared with the things that you're looking for your health. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about using macros. So I mean like macronutrient, those kind of macros as data and how to evaluate that. How do I use those macros and evaluate it with the data that I'm collecting from my blood sugar monitor so that I can make changes. Okay. We're going to talk about monitoring blood sugars, and then we are going to talk about medications. Because again, if you've ever heard me talk on the podcast, like if you're on medications and you've been medicated for your type 2 diabetes, you've been medicated because of the way you've eaten in the past. If you change that, you're going to need to change your medications. If you don't, you could get very sick. Okay. So we're going to do some basic overview on that as well. So, goal setting. I could really talk about goal setting all day long. I could probably do a 4-hour workshop on goal setting. One, I think it's fun. I think of goal setting as a form of dreaming, and our brain likes to do that. We like to imagine everything that's possible. I think goals are fun. I think, again, making a goal that you don't actually achieve can feel crappy, which is why a lot of people try to avoid making goals. Okay. So we're going to do it in a way that's going to set a very clear path. It's a very effective way to set a clear path for achieving your goals. That is the way I'm going to teach it today. We're going to use some of this other information we're going to look at. So the lab evaluation discussion, we're going to use that as an example of how we're going to set goals. We're going to use talking about your macros and comparing it to your blood sugar logs and how to make those adjustments as an example for goal setting, some of the tasks and strategies in goal setting. So these things are going to kind of overlap, and there's going to be kind of a layering to the discussion today. I love goal setting, and I think the way that I teach it, instead of using it as a way to be disappointed in ourselves or frustrated with ourselves or feel bad about our goals, really showing a way to make an effective path, an effective, clear path to achieving the goals that you're looking for. So the first question that I want you to consider is, what do you want from 2024? And that's going to be a pretty overarching goal, right? It's 12 months, 365 days for you to work on achieving that goal. Okay. So I want you to consider kind of a broad, what do you want from 2024? It seems like like it's a lot of time, right? Recognize you're going to have to break it down. If not, our brain will push off the uncomfortable part of achieving the goal, right? Recognize you don't have a goal that you've already accomplished, that you've already achieved. Okay. So if relationships are something my mother would tell you I struggle with. And I think it's adorable and painfully accurate when my mother talks about this. But my mother has a marriage of 51 years. Her and my dad have been married for 51 years. And her goal of having a marriage of longevity is not something she has to commit to every year. 2024 is not how am I going to create a marriage of longevity? My mom doesn't have that on her goal list because it's something she's already done. Okay. If it weren't something she had done, there would be a discomfort. There would be some uncomfortable portion of that has kept her from achieving that. And that's why she would have to commit to it. Okay. So recognize if we don't break down our goals into smaller pieces, if we're in 2024, there's 365 days, I'll get it done. You're going to postpone that discomfort. Okay. So there's some uncomfortable thing that is associated with the goal that you're trying to achieve. What you're going to want to do is make a list of two or three things that you want to achieve, that you want to create in the first 3 months of 2024. Those two or three things should support the overarching goal that you have for 2024. So sometimes people will say, I want to lose 75 pounds, 100 pounds, 50 pounds, 20 pounds, whatever it is. We're going to have a weight loss goal. And a part of that is also, in 2024, I want to lose weight. I want to get my A1C under control. Okay. So that is going to be that overarching goal. But in the first 3 months of 2024, what do you want to see? Maybe it's, overall in 2024, I want to lose 50 pounds. But in the first 3 months of 2024, I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay. Maybe we don't expect to lose all 50 pounds in this first 3 months, in that first quarter of the year. Okay. So you're going to make 2 to 3 smaller goals that support that bigger goal. Okay. And then you're going to break those down. So for each of those 2 or 3 goals, which is kind of why maybe sometimes we focus on only one or two, but for each of those goals, you're going to break them down into smaller goals for the month of January, for the month of February, for the month of March. So if you want to lose 20 pounds in the first quarter of 2024, then you're going to have to then say, what do you want to lose in January? What do I want to lose 7 of those pounds in January. Okay. Or maybe 10 of those pounds, expecting that February and March, you might lose less. Okay. We're going to use a blood sugar example here in just a moment, but I'm just using this as kind of a brief example. And then for each of those months, you're going to break down those goals even farther into weekly goals. So for January, what do you want to accomplish in week 1 of January, week 2 of January, week 3 of January, and week 4 of January? 2024 is a gift to us because January 1st is a Monday. So it kind of like, oh, just a natural flow. This is what we're going to have to do. We're not having to like start on January 3rd, which is a Monday or a Sunday or whatever. So week 1, week 2, week 3, and week 4 of January, what goals do you want to accomplish in each of those weeks? That is going to create for you a task list for each of those weeks. And really, each week should probably only have 5 or 6 tasks. And then what you do is you plan your week around those tasks. Each day, you're going to be like, look at that task list. Where can I pop 1 or 2 things from that 5 to 6 item list? Where can I do 1 or 2 of those things each day of the week? And then those are going to be the actions that you need to do to get you to the goal for the week, to the goal for the month, to the goal for the quarter, and the goal for the year. Okay. So that's how we're going to break down this goal setting. The nice thing about breaking it down this way is that then you actually create yourself a very clear task list of the things that you need to be doing. You can definitely apply this process to the year, but that gets to be a big bite. And we're not going to talk about that today. We're really going to talk about the first 3 months of the year today. Okay. But definitely you just rinse and repeat this process for quarter 2 and quarter 3 and quarter 4 to create what you're wanting to create for 2024. Again, if you take just 2024 as a large bite, you're going to end up pushing things off, pushing the uncomfortable piece off. The way that you get a clear, effective plan for what you're running in 2024 is by breaking it down into I call it getting granular, getting very, very discrete pieces of information and tasks that you need to do, and then doing those things. It gives you a lot of clarity, and it gives you those small steps to get you to that big thing that you're trying to accomplish. So when we think about these daily tasks, the computer has taken it, and yeah, there we go. When we think about these daily tasks, these are the things that you need to be doing each day. Okay. Some of these things are going to be like, oh, I need to go grocery shopping. Maybe you're not going to go grocery shopping every single day, but you're going to need to figure out where in the week you're going to go grocery shopping. Things that you might need to be doing every day, though, is like planning your food or preparing your food. That may be something you need to do each day. These specific tasks, these things that you're doing each day, need to support the weekly goal and the monthly goal and the yearly goal. So all of these tasks, no matter, again, whether it's a task that you're doing every single day or whether it's a task that you need to do somewhere during the week, each of these tasks should be filtered through the question, do they support my weekly goal? Do they support my monthly goal? Do they support my quarterly goal? If you have set the monthly or the weekly monthly goals up correctly, they should all support that quarterly goal. Okay. So the only question you really need to be asking about your daily tasks then, or does this support my weekly goal? So I want you to take a few moments here and write down a few of these goals, a few of these tasks. Take a few moments, write your yearly goal, write how that would affect the quarter, like your first quarter, what you want to achieve of that yearly goal in that first quarter, what you want to achieve of that quarterly goal in January. And then what are some things you're going to achieve week 1, 2, 3, and 4? And then what are some daily tasks? You don't, again, guys, this is not written in Sharpie. This is not a must do. Once you write it down, I'm not going to send the, goal police out to you to make sure you get it done. Okay. This should be written in pencil so that you can erase it and make adjustments as you need to go, but just get some ideas. While you're doing that, I'm going to check emails again to make sure nobody's missed anything. And I'm going to check some um, comment boxes to make sure that there's nothing in there. I always worry things like, we can't hear you is going to be um, something I'm not going to be aware of. So I want to make sure. Okay. Again, you should be coming up with some of these goals because you're going to want to work through some of those things. Okay. So we are going to, what you may be realizing, right? Like we're going to write some few basic goals, but you're going to have to, if diabetes, and I hope that that's why you're here, is that you want to fix your diabetes. If diabetes and fixing your type 2 diabetes is the goal that you have, recognizing that you're going to have some basic understanding about how to fix your type 2 diabetes. So I want to make sure to review that, partly because it's my jam, it's the thing I do, but also because I want to make sure that you're determining tasks that you can be doing that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. Okay. I always use the example. People will come to me and they'll be like, I have my clients do a commitment blueprint most weeks. And I'll be like, tell me what the things are that you're going to commit to. And I had one client, she's like, I'm going to do more water. And I'm like, all right, let's talk about that commitment. I'm like, what's the meaning behind that commitment for you? And their belief was that somehow that the more water is going to help fix their type 2 diabetes. And there is maybe some reality, like there is maybe something there. If you're filling your belly up with water, you're going to not want to eat so much. Absolutely, that's true. The process of changing your metabolism so that you're not burning sugar all the time and instead you're burning fat so that you start to burn up some of that stored tissue, that stored fat tissue, that stored adipose tissue, that takes a lot of water. So you want to make sure that you're staying well hydrated. If you're exercising, you're going to feel horrible if you're, sweating out all this water and not replacing it. Absolutely. All of that is true. But there's no amount of water that you can drink that's going to make keeping a carb load of 330 carbs per day something that's going to fix your type 2 diabetes. So part of it is understanding the science behind it so that you can do effective tasks. You can give yourself effective tasks to use to do these weekly goals and do these, daily task lists, weekly goals, monthly goals, those things. So the basics of type 2 diabetes, if you've ever heard me talk about this, you have to fix insulin resistance. Too much insulin in your system is the problem for most type 2 diabetics. Too much insulin in your system is the problem. When we talk about metabolic health, we're talking about too much insulin in your system. So I think of too much insulin, of hyperinsulinemia, or of these problems of metabolism related to insulin. I think of the insulin as a tree trunk. If you look in this picture, you can see this tree trunk. The tree trunk is the insulin. You can see it here. Each branch that comes off of the tree trunk, those are the diseases that are caused by too much insulin in your system. The root disease is too much insulin in your system. The type 2 diabetes, the prediabetes, the dyslipidemia or high cholesterol, the polycystic ovarian syndrome, the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, the Alzheimer's, all of those, hypertension, GERD, all of those things are branches off of that primary trunk. Okay. So, what we do to fix type 2 diabetes, and again, I hope that your yearly goal involves a lowering of your A1C. What you're going to need to do to fix that is fix the insulin problem. You need to lower the amount of insulin in your system and fix the insulin problem. Okay. This, in general, is going to lead to metabolic health. Part of metabolic health is going to be fixing type 2 diabetes, normalizing, your liver enzymes. It's also going to involve weight loss. Those sorts of things typically are what my clients will see. Not every single one of my clients needs to lose weight. Maybe a mic drop moment here is that type 2 diabetes is not because of weight. The fastest rising part of the population that we're seeing type 2 diabetics is thin type 2 diabetics. They call it TOFI in the literature. I don't love this term and I hope that they change it, and they probably have, and I just haven't come across the new term. But TOFI, TOFI, thin on the outside, fat on the inside. It is not about your weight. It is truly about the metabolism and your internal biology. And this high insulin level is the basis for that. So, one of the ways that you're going to monitor what you're doing with fixing that insulin level is that you're going to have to monitor your blood sugars. Somehow you're going to have to figure out how you're going to do that. Um, your blood sugar is a surrogate marker, meaning that it's not, you're looking at a shadow. The blood sugar is a shadow of what's happening with the insulin. Okay. So if your blood sugar, your fasting blood sugar is coming down, you should assume that your insulin resistance is improving, that that insulin function is improving, that that high insulin level in your body is coming down. Okay. If you're not sure about the insulin information, make sure one point that you put in, that you can put it in the question and answer box. I will see it and I will come back to this. There are plenty of previously done webinars on insulin resistance and what that means and why that's the source of your type 2 diabetes. You can find those. You can always send me an email, Delane@DelaneMD. I'm happy to answer any questions. So you're going to want to figure out a way to monitor your blood sugars. The easiest way to do that is doing a home blood sugar monitoring. So you can do a prick machine, which is a little glucometer. I have a picture of it coming up. You can have a continuous glucose monitor. I have a button on the back of my arm that always shows me my blood sugars. It's attached to an app on my phone. I don't know if you can see it, but this green box here is my daily I mean, like, that's what my blood sugar's been since 10 o'clock last night. I went for a run because I always think it's hilarious that running bumps my blood sugars. The hotter it is, the higher my blood sugar bump is. But you can see whatever my blood sugar is right now. So it's 91. Okay. That's a continuous, right? It gives me a continuous reading glucose monitor. Okay. Versus the prick machine is just giving you, that's what we call it in the group. It's a prick machine. It's just giving you a single reading in the moment. You're going to have to find some way to monitor your blood sugars if you're wanting to improve your blood sugars this year. Okay. Other things that you're going to see and ways that you might monitor, or things that you might want to see improvement on: your hemoglobin A1C. This is what your doctor is measuring in the office. They are measuring a blood sugar, or they're taking a blood draw, and then they're monitoring how much glucose has been bound to your hemoglobin. Essentially, that's kind of a layman's terms. It's a simplified version. I don't even know if it's layman's. It's a simplified version. So hemoglobin A1C is something your doctor will monitor. And that is what they're going to use to categorize you. Are you normal? Are you pre-diabetic? Are you diabetic? Are you severely diabetic, right? So if you're starting out with hemoglobin A1C of 7.5, maybe your goal for 2024 is that you're going to see that come into a normal range. You're going to have to decide what you want that to be. I always say some of my clients just don't want to end up on insulin. They want to keep their hemoglobin A1C in a range that keeps them off of insulin. But many of my clients want to optimize their metabolic health. They want to have a surety in being metabolically healthy. And so what your goal is going to be a little different. But this is a way that you will monitor if you're diabetic and you're wanting to reverse your type 2 diabetes in 2024, there's going to be some element you're going to have to follow that hemoglobin A1C. You're going to need your doctor's help to do that. Fasting serum insulin level is probably a more precise way of looking at metabolic health than your hemoglobin A1C or your fasting blood sugars are. Okay. You're going to see the fasting serum insulin level climb high before you see blood sugars climb high. So we look at that if if you work with a functional med doctor, you're going to be looking at those numbers probably more than you're going to be looking at things like an A1C or fasting blood sugars. A 2-hour glucose challenge test is another way, and probably the most precise and sophisticated way for looking at insulin resistance. Again, you're going to need that ordered by your physician. Lots of doctors are going to look at you. I think this is shifting, and that's kind of exciting. Maybe my, constant talking about insulin resistance is paying off, but I know it's not just me, other doctors are doing this too. But we're seeing a shift going from just looking at the blood sugars to actually looking at the insulin resistance and moving to ordering that fasting serum insulin level. 5 years ago, if you would have asked your doctor to look at your fasting serum insulin level, they would have looked at you like you had three heads and were insane and they were not going to do it. And they would have given you a lot of pushback, things that sound like, hey, insurance isn't going to cover that. Or what do you want that for? Right. And the reason that they would ask you that is because they didn't know what to do with that information. Okay. So recognizing that fasting serum insulin level, you're going to have to ask your doctor, but they should look at you less crazy about that. The 2-hour glucose challenge test, that is something, I mean, and really, like you have to go to a lab for 2 hours. Us as humans running as people running around in the world, we don't want to go and do the 2-hour glucose challenge test. But that is definitely a more accurate version or an accurate result to tell you about your metabolic health and insulin resistance. And to know, like if you're in that pre-diabetic range, like how pre-diabetic are you? That 2-hour glucose challenge test is going to give you more information about that. An ALT, that is a lab, that's a liver finding. So you have it on your usually on your comprehensive metabolic panel, a CMP that's ordered. So you'll see like a sodium, you'll see, a glucose, sodium, creatinine, BUN, potassium, you'll see chloride, you'll see a CO2, you'll see all these, that's chemistry panel. And then you'll also start to see protein and bilirubin and ALT, AST, alkaline phosphatase. Those labs are in that. That ALT specifically is that is a marker of metabolic health. You want to see that number under 17. Looking at your fasting lipid panel. These are all things that ALT, the fasting lipid panel, the hemoglobin A1C, and a blood sugar on that chemistry panel. These are all things that if you've seen your doctor in the last year, you have these numbers somewhere. You're going to just want to look at them and see where you're at. If you go for your yearly physical this month, you're going to probably have access to that information also because your docs are just going to run it. You're not going to have to ask them for a fasting blood sugar. They're going to get that on your chemistry panel. You're not going to have to ask them for the ALT because they're already ordering that for the most part. Most doctors are going to get a fasting lipid panel on you also. Your LDL, your HDL, and your triglycerides on that fasting lipid panel all give you tons of information about your metabolic health. So recognize you may have some of these numbers to kind of get an idea of where you're at. You want your LDLs, really, they need to be below 100, probably better to be closer to 80 or 90. If you are diabetic and your doctor is going by the traditional, the traditional guidelines, they're going to push for your LDL to be below 70. There's mixed information about that, but just so you know. If your LDLs are 130, they're not right. That is not good. That is definitely not where you want to be, and you're going to want to move those down. Your HDLs should be high. That's what I believe the H stands for, high. You want that number high. If you're running at 35, that is far too low. Again, evidence of metabolic disease, of not being, optimally metabolically healthy. Triglycerides, same thing. Like your doctor is going to be like, they're going to be off your back if it's below 150. But really, we know that that number needs to be below 100 and probably closer to 80 to really represent metabolic health. So those are some numbers that you can have to kind of gauge your metabolic health. Okay. Okay. So fasting blood sugars, what you're shooting for is under 100, probably closer to 80 or 90 every day. That's what you're shooting for. Hemoglobin A, if you want to have metabolic health, again, now if you want your doctor off your back, they're going to be happy if you're 105. But probably to ensure that you don't have insulin resistance, probably needs to be closer to 85 or 90. Hemoglobin A1C, again, your doc's going to be off your back if it's under 6. If you're medicated, your doc's going to be off your back if it's under 7. What we know is to like be sure that you don't have any insulin resistance floating around. You probably need it closer to 5.2 or less. Okay. Fasting serum insulin level, the lab is going to report it out as normal if it's under 15. What we know is it probably needs to be under 6 or 7 to really represent having no insulin resistance in your system. The 2-hour glucose challenge test is a harder one to, I'm not going to give you a normal range because it's just one that you're probably not going to get. And two, it's just, it's a more dynamic test. And so what's normal has to be kind of evaluated as you go. ALT, again, less than 17. We know that that is probably where you need to be metabolically healthy, to know that there's a very limited chance that you have any insulin resistance in your body. The normal on the labs is going to say it's normal below like 33. Anything below 33 is normal. Okay. And then that fasting lipid panel, again, LDLs probably need to be somewhere between 80 and 100 to have metabolic health, to have evidence of that. HDLs need to be higher. They're going to be definitely probably above 50, but probably closer to 60 to have evidence of metabolic health. And then triglycerides, you're going to want them less than 80. So I hope that answers. I hope you're writing those down, and you of course can come back and listen to this. It will be up on YouTube, so you can catch this. This was at around 30 minutes that we started this conversation. So if you need to advance to that part in the video so you can get those numbers. Eve has a questions. I use a CGM. My blood sugar reading during the day are generally good, 80s and 90s, up to 120 or 140 after a meal, depending on what I eat. It is almost always higher at night, 115 to 130. How do I interpret this? Using a CGM, what is my fasting blood sugar considered? I see when are you reading a fasting blood sugar? The number when I wake up, 115 to 120, or before I eat during the day, high 80s, high 90s. That's a great question, Eve. So a fasting blood sugar is actually going to be the blood sugar. What we mean by that is we are trying to collect how your body responds to cortisol. Every human body releases cortisol early in the morning. I call cortisol the original refrigerator. 10,000 years ago, breakfast wasn't waiting in your kitchen for you to eat. So your body had to have a way of releasing energy, glucose, to your cells so that you could get up and be a human being. The way that the body developed to do this is cortisol. So we release cortisol, and cortisol goes to our liver and tells our liver to release glucose into our system. And that glucose then fuels our cells. Okay. So what you're catching and what you want to catch is that effect, that cortisol. Okay. Or that blood sugar that's related to that cortisol. Okay. So you may be lower 80s, 90s, 60s, even at night when you're asleep. And then the cortisol releases, and it may go up to even 110, 105. 100, that's probably normal, but then it's going to come down because your cells are going to be insulin sensitive. So when your body produces the glucose, your pancreas is going to produce insulin to make that insulin, or to bring that glucose inside the cells, right? That's what insulin does. It's wanting to shift that fuel from outside the cells to the inside of the cells. And that is what's going to be picked up on either your CGM or your prick machine as your blood sugar coming down. So you'll see a little bump, and it will be very small. And that's going to bring your blood sugar down. So what you're catching with that fasting is kind of that bottom. You're going to want to catch because that bump usually happens somewhere between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. So you're wanting to catch as that's coming down. That's really what you're looking for. What happens in the morning and why the morning blood sugar is always so high is two things. One, you're insulin resistant. So your cells are not, you're going to get a blood sugar spike. You're going to have insulin come up to pull that blood sugar down. But because your cells are insulin resistant, they don't do that effectively. They don't do that well and they don't do that effectively. So that's one reason that you see a higher fasting blood sugar. The second reason, I think, as as impactful or maybe more so than the insulin resistance that is happening at your cell level in the morning is that cortisol not only gets released in the morning because you're getting up to be a human being, but cortisol also gets released because of stress. And when you have metabolic disease, when you have hyperinsulinemia, when you have insulin resistance, when you are type 2 diabetic, however you want to use, what term you want to use, they're all on the same spectrum and they're disease. And because there's that disease present in your body all the time, that cortisol is released as a stressor. So you get that morning cortisol, but you get an exaggerated release of the cortisol because your body is in a disease state, and that's perceived by our body as a stressor. So you get an exaggerated cortisol release. That exaggerated cortisol release goes to the liver and makes your liver make an exaggerated glucose response. That exaggerated glucose response then, of course, rides higher. And because, again, you still have this effective insulin resistance, so you're slowly bringing that down. That's why that fasting blood sugar is high. It has nothing to do with what you ate yesterday. It may have something to do with what you've eaten over the last number of months or years, but it's not because of something you ate yesterday. That fasting blood sugar is evidence of your metabolic health, which is why it's one of the things that we talk about. You notice on this list of things that we're watching, we are not watching. I'm not saying look at your 2 hour after a meal blood sugar, because that does not tell me nearly as much about your metabolic health as that fasting blood sugar does. Your fasting blood sugar is going to change as you continue to make changes over the long term. Okay. That is going to be reflected in that fasting blood sugar. It is not going to be like what you did yesterday is not going to have a significant impact on your fasting blood sugar in the morning. Okay. So let me know, Eve, if that didn't answer your question, but you definitely, the blood sugar that you want to look at, the fasting blood sugar that you want to look at is first thing when you wake up in the morning. Okay. So hopefully that's helped. All right. So other testing that your doctor may want to do or that people ask me about, um, I don't think this testing is horribly relevant. It's usually your doctor is looking to do it because they believe that you might have a latent onset type 1 picture, meaning that you have an adult onset of type 1 diabetes. That's what all of these tests are looking for. So you can run them. I think that sometimes they're complicated to understand because usually they're looking at if they're looking at, how much insulin do you have? If you're very diabetic and you've been diabetic for a long time, your pancreas may be exhausted and not able to mount a significant insulin response. So one, I think interpreting them is challenging. That's the first thing. My answer to anybody who's like, well, I might be a type 1, I might be a late onset, an adult onset type 1. My answer to that is always, yes, you might be, but if you're eating junk food, cleaning that out of your diet is always going to give you the best um, foundation for living healthy. You got to get that junk food out of your diet. If you find that you clear that junk food out of your diet and your blood sugars get better and suddenly you're not diabetic, I don't care what those numbers, your C-peptide, your insulin autoantibody testing, I don't care what any of those numbers are. If you clean that food out of your diet and your blood sugars normalize, it was caused because of the food that you eat, not because of your, not 100% because of your genetics. Okay. There is some interplay there. But if you can fix your blood sugars with the food that you eat, it's not a type 1 setting. So there's some testing there. If your doc runs those, I guess that's fine. If he runs these and he's like, you're a latent onset and go ahead and keep eating chocolate cake and Pop Tarts, you need to seriously question that. That's probably not, I don't just see anywhere where that's going to lead to health. Other tests, other findings of insulin resistance. Hypertension is very clearly associated with insulin resistance. In fact, hypertension is kind of the outcome of insulin resistance on the kidney function. It does not matter if you are insulin resistant, it does not matter how low the sodium content of your diet is. If you are insulin resistant, it is going to be very challenging to get your blood sugar normalized without meds. Okay. So that's another thing that you can monitor at home and determine whether you're improving your insulin resistant state. And then GERD, there's also certainly a connection between insulin resistance and GERD. All right, so let's work through this goal setting process. So if by say like by March 31st, now we have some understanding of what you might be looking for and how to fix some of that insulin resistance and normalize some of these numbers and maybe where you want your goals at. So by March 31st, if you have a goal of having an A1C of 5.6 and a fasting blood sugar of 95, if those are your goals, remember we said only set 2 or 3, if those are your goals, your January, February, and March plan is going to be made depending on where you start. So you're going to have to look at what your current A1C or your current fasting blood sugar is. You're going to have to compare your macronutrients, so your carbohydrate intake, with that number. Okay. So, and this is, I always say honesty is imperative. And I know that we all were taught that growing up, but this is not the time to paint the prettiest picture of the things that you're eating. Lots of women come to me that way as a physician. Patients would always be like, oh, but no, I've eaten salads for the last 2 days. That's like silently tacked on to what they're saying to me. You have not been only eating salads if I'm getting an A1C of 10. Like you're not only eating salads. Clearly, I know that by your numbers. Like you're not pulling one over on us, right? And so in my brain, I'm like, are you eating like a candy salad? Is it like you have some base of M&Ms and maybe some gummy worms thrown in on it? Like maybe a candy salad, but this is not a real salad, right? Like that's not what's happening if you've got that A1C of 10. So you're going to need to not paint a pretty picture, paint a very accurate picture. And the reason it's a gift to you to do that. If you've been eating bread with every meal and dessert every night and a couple pieces of chocolate, peppered multiple times throughout the day, and one soda or a Frappa Kappa Chappa Bappa or whatever it is, if you've been eating those daily or the accumulation of all of them daily, that's awesome. You have some really low-hanging fruit to clean things up and get your blood sugar into a normal range. This is not the time to paint a pretty picture. This is the time to paint a very honest picture. It's also going to give you guidance of what you need to do. If you come to me and you say, oh, I've only been eating 110 carbs a day, and I don't know why my fasting blood sugar is 130. If you come to me saying that, my answer to you, because I'm going to believe what you say, it's like, oh, you're going to have to cut from 110 carbs probably down to 70 carbs a day. And then we're going to have to see what happens with your blood sugar. Okay. Clearly, eating 110 carbs a day might be more comfortable for you than eating 70 grams of carbs a day. And if really what was leading to that 130 blood sugar every morning was that you were eating closer to 200 grams of carbs, cutting down to 110 or 100 may be a little more manageable. And you're going to want to be honest about that. Okay. So you're going to want to collect 2 or 3 days worth of honest, ugly, if you want to say, like honest data that really reflects the things that you're eating. I would say collect 2 or 3 days of that. And you're going to add up your carbohydrate count. There may be a benefit to also adding up how much saturated fat you're eating. Okay, so if what your change from the food that you eat is, I'm not going to eat the bread and the pizza and the I don't know, the candy. I'm not going to eat that anymore. But what I am going to do is I'm going to eat pepperoni and pastrami and processed meats and cheeses, recognizing that that saturated fat can block, that can create products that block the inside of the cell from functioning when the insulin binds. So it can have a insulin resistant effect on the inside of the cell. So that is another thing, guys. If you're coming to this call and your fasting blood sugar is 120 in the morning, and you're like, no, really, I am truly only eating 50 grams of carbs a day. If you're eating 50 grams of carbs a day, but the other foods that you're eating are highly processed meats and cheeses that are high in saturated fats, you may have to make some adjustments there. So most of the time it's the carbs. So that's kind of what I help people focus on. If you're count your carbs up over 2 to 3 days, get a good average of what you've actually been eating and see what your fasting blood sugar is. Okay. So if you've been eating, and the average American diet is that you're eating 300 to 350 grams of carbs a day. That is the standard American diet. If that's what you've been eating and your blood sugars, your fasting blood sugar in the morning's 150, you're going to want to drop, I would say at least to 150. I would half, like if you're eating 350, I would definitely drop it in half, right? Like to 150, 175. If you're eating 300, I would probably drop it to 125. You're going to want to make a significant jump. Now, if you're eating 100 grams of carbs a day and you're having a fasting blood sugar of 108 and you're wanting to see that drop, you can probably drop down to like 80 grams of carbs a day. And then what you're going to do is you're going to do it for 7 to 10 days. And at the end of 7 to 10 days, you're going to see what's the difference in my fasting blood sugar then from when I started. You are not, you are not going to, I started a fasting blood sugar of 120 and I've done it for 2 days and my fasting blood sugar isn't down. That is not, you're not going to see the change that fast. You're going to have to commit to giving it 7 to 10 days, a week to a week and a half, maybe sometimes even 14 days. And then you're going to compare what happens at the end. What was the blood sugar at the end with what is the blood sugar at the beginning? That's how you're going to do this. And you are going to repeat this process over and over and over until you get the results you want. That is what the goal setting will look like for you. That is what that clear, effective process, plan, and strategy will look like for you. It will take making a change and monitoring that fasting blood sugar for 7 to 10 days and seeing what happens at the end of it. It will take that time to see the change that you're dropping, dropping your carbohydrate count will actually lead to for you. So in January of 2024, if you are starting with fasting blood sugars of 150 or even 200, whatever that number is, what are you going to want to see by the end of January 31st? If it's 115 by the end of the month, that's great. Then what will you see at the end of week one? If you're starting at 200, you might see a drop to 140s by the end of week one, maybe, but you're not going to see it down to 115 or 80 by the end of week one. Okay. What do you expect to see at the end of week two? You're going to make yourself a goal for that, something to shoot for. That's how you're going to measure the things that you're doing, the actions that you're taking. Okay. Those daily tasks that you're going to set for yourself you're going to determine whether they work for you or whether you need to do something different, whether that's enough or you need to do more. You're going to determine that based on these things that you expect to see at the end of week one, at the end of week two, at the end of week three. So if you're wanting to see a fasting blood sugar of 140 each morning by January 7th, so that's the end of week one, if that's what you're wanting to see, then what you know about insulin resistance is going to guide you on what actions, what tasks that you need to be scheduling for yourself. Maybe it's less carbs, maybe it's more exercise, maybe it's better sleep, maybe you want to manage your stress with meditation, maybe you need to make sure you're going grocery shopping, maybe you need to make sure you're giving yourself time for meal prepping, maybe you need to learn how to manage restaurants better. Whatever it is, these are the things that you're going to do. And I don't want you to necessarily commit to everything on this list I've just given you. I want you to consider which of these tasks are going to give you the most bang for your buck. And then again, like, does this task support my weekly goal? Does this task support my monthly goal? Does this task support that quarterly goal I've set for myself? And you're going to want to put it on a calendar, Monday through Friday, put it on a calendar. Where are you going to go grocery shopping? When are you going to food prep? Where are you going to get your exercise in? Where am I going to get these things that I think are going to give me the most bang for my buck? Where am I going to put that in my calendar? And then at the end of the week, you're going to evaluate your progress. At the end of the week, if you're moving towards your goal, so your goal is, to have at January 7th, a blood sugar of 140. At January 7th, if your blood sugar is 160, you need to do some things differently. If your blood sugar is 144, it's probably you've gotten there. You're in that 140 range. Okay. Remember your blood sugars, whether it be your prick machine or your glucometer, they are not perfectly accurate and precise. There is a 10% flux on any of those. And that means, hear me on this, that means if you're going for a blood sugar of 140 and you're getting a reading of 154, that's 10% above 140. If you're getting a reading of 126, that's 10% below 140. All of those numbers may represent 140. Okay. That's something hard for us to get our head around, but do understand. Clearly, 200 doesn't represent 140. 175 doesn't represent 140. Okay. So if you're seeing 140, say it's day number 8 and you see 147, and day number 9, you see 140, and day 10, you see 144, you're probably there. That probably represents you moving into that 140 range. Okay. So you're going to want to evaluate your progress, and then you're going to want to make adjustments. If bringing your carbs down to 120 grams of carbs per day did not get you where you want to be, do you need to drop it by another 10 or 20%? Do you need to go down to 100 grams of carbs per day? Maybe. Do you need to exercise? Maybe. Do you need to get better sleep? Maybe. Like, what is it that you need to do? There's a number of different tools that you can do to improve your metabolic health. How do you want to use that toolbox is really what it comes down to. So medications, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about medications. This is really important. You need to contact your provider. If you're going to make these changes and you are on medications, you need to contact your provider. You need to get a clear line of communication open with them about how you're going to share your blood sugars with them and how they're going to share information with you about what meds you need to change. Okay. I always say know what meds you're on and know what they're doing. In the group, in the Delane MD group, there's an entire module that talks about your meds and explains each med group and each examples. Is it Actos? Is it, glipizide, whatever, whichever meds you're on, it explains what they do. It's long and drawn out and could last an hour in of itself. So we're not going to dive into that. Rule of thumb that I need you to understand. Metformin is probably the only medication that is truly safe and has such a low risk of having low blood sugars on it. Metformin is probably the only med that you're truly safe making aggressive dietary changes on and not worrying about getting a low blood sugar. Metformin is probably the only one. I do not have any. I think sometimes I don't know. I don't know that I even promote metformin. But if you've got to make a concession about a med that you're going to be on, I always say metformin's the one that I would make the concession about. I would not go on any of the others because I truly believe that they actually make it harder to reverse your type 2 diabetes. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. But that's the only one that's probably entirely safe to make changes on. The rest of them, you need to contact your medical provider and let them know what you're doing. Okay. Those other meds, what they do is they block your body's natural ability to bring your blood sugar up, right? Because your blood sugar's been up too long and we think it's a problem. So we need to bring it down. So we're going to block that ability to bring it up. But what that means is if you drop low, your body doesn't have the ability to correct that. And that can be very, very dangerous. Okay. You can get quite sick and you need somebody to help guide you through these medication uses. Okay. Through this medication point. This problem, I hate to use that word, the problem of the medication. You need somebody to guide you coming off of those. And that's why you need to be in contact with your medication prescriber, okay, to help you make those adjustments. So when to call your doctor? Lots of people, if you've ever been to a diabetic education class, they talked about going too low and they act like it happens all the time and you need to be so careful. And if you're feeling this way, you need to just eat something. I don't promote that because most of the time, I literally just had this happen with a client. They got jittery. Their CGM was alarming that they were going low, going low, going low. and they were not medicated at all on any meds, not even metformin. And their answer, because of what they were taught in diabetes education classes, was to eat a cinnamon roll. And of course, their blood sugars jumped to 300. Okay. So understand going low is rare, dangerously low is even rarer, and eating a cinnamon roll is not the answer. Okay. So when your blood sugars start to drop to the one teens range, 110, one teens range after a meal, that's when you need to call your primary care and say, hey, my blood sugars are jumping down. They're, normalizing out after meals. I'd like to start coming off of some of my meds. Understand that when you come off of your meds, you will likely have a rebound elevation of your blood sugar, and that's normal. Nothing's gone wrong. Your meds have been pulling that down. And now you're going to see as those meds go off, they jump back up. And then you're going to maybe have to make some dietary adjustments or maybe just ride that out for a week or two. Okay. So, do understand that you're going to have those rebound high blood pressure or high blood sugars. And they're probably not going to rebound to 500, but they may, if you were running 110s after a meal, you may jump up to 150s after a meal. And that's not surprising. Okay. So what's dangerous? Again, if you are unmedicated, there is no dangerous low blood sugar. It just isn't out there. Your body is going to take care of it. Okay. So if you are not medicated, there are no dangerously low blood sugars. If you are medicated, though, probably anything under 75 is too low, and you need to probably use protein to treat that. And what I mean by protein is cheese, chicken, unsweetened peanut butter, natural peanut butters, those sorts of things to treat that low blood sugar. Nuts are probably another great thing to treat low blood sugars with. You need to monitor it closely and make sure it's coming up. Okay. You may or may not have symptoms with this. Okay. If you have been medicated and if you've been diabetic for a long time, your body's ability to feel those low blood sugars has gotten dampened over time. So you may not appreciate it. Okay. So anything below 75, if you're medicated, is probably something you need to address. Okay. If you, and again, please address it with protein, not with a cinnamon roll. If you're not medicated, your body is actually going to correct that low. So there's no problem with that. So other meds that will cause changes in your blood sugars and usually changes up. If you end up using steroids because you had a respiratory infection, those will drive your blood sugars up. They will also drive your blood pressure up. They can. So watch for that. Statin therapies. So the medicine that you take, atorvastatin, Lipitor, Crestor, those kinds of meds. If you're taking those meds for your cholesterol, understand that they can also cause elevated blood sugars. Beta blockers, so that's metoprolol, carvedilol, or carvedilol, however you pronounce it. Coreg is the brand name. Those kinds of meds can also cause some higher blood sugars. So being aware of that. And then immunizations set off an inflammatory response, an immune response. And a lot of times you will see some higher blood sugars associated with those also. So those are some different meds that you may be on that cause your blood sugars to be high. Don't be surprised if you see that. All right. So questions. Eve's question I answered. I'm not seeing another one there. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to put it in the question and answer box. I'm trying to make my mouse work and it's giving me a hard time. I'm going to look one other place for questions. So if you are interested in any of this work or having me guide you through this work, please send me a message to Delane@DelaneMD.com. We will get you set up for a reverse your diabetes assessment call. Again, like 2024 is shining upon us with all of its glory. One, the hope for what can be of the new year, but also it starts on a Monday. And clients who are starting in January 2024, we will be meeting on Monday on that day one to get started and make sure that you have everything that you need to get you healthy in 2024. So if you're interested in that, the first step is really setting up one of the reverse your diabetes assessment calls. I have a few slots open still this week to get those done. In fact, I have one here in just a minute. So, but if you're ready to go and start, have somebody guide you, get the help that you need so you can figure this out and put this diabetes thing behind you. I set this goal setting example up in the first 3 months, that you'll see lowering. Most of my clients in their first 3 months actually will see their fasting blood sugar normalize and their A1C normalize. So it really can happen very fast. And then we just have to learn how to live that way. And what is it that I can, how frequently can I have a treat before I end up getting sick again? And so that's what we kind of figure out for you. And having a guide to help you along that path is helpful. So if that's something you're interested in, send me a message, Delane@DelaneMD.com. I will get you set up. There's a couple more questions, maybe. Oh my gosh, you guys are pouring them in if I can get my mouse to work. Okay. You are so welcome, Rebecca. So good to see you in here. Should atorvastatin be taken at a certain time of the day? I'm taking it at night. Lots of people take it at night, and it's because it can make you sleepy, Lisa. So that's not surprising. When counting carbs, are vegetable carbs and fruit carbs equal to eat? Is it important to look at glycemic index? Honestly, Deborah, I mean, like you can look at glycemic index, but in the realm of things, like unprocessed foods, natural foods, real foods, human food is always going to be better. I always say nobody got diabetic because their banana problem. I don't care what the glycemic index is. It's not what caused diabetes. When you have insulin resistance and your cells are not functioning entirely correctly, though, definitely you can see your blood sugars go up even with something natural like a banana. Okay. So, are they equal to eat? Vegetables and fruit carbs equal to eat? Um, there's going to be more carbs with fruit, and certain vegetables, there's going to be more carbs than other vegetables. I would really just look at the total carb count. Some people will look at they'll look at only like their net carbs and they're subtracting fiber out, blah, blah, blah. I don't look at that. I find that people who look at only net carbs have to actually lower their carb intake even lower than people who are looking at the total carbs. So I don't know if that helps answer your question, Deborah. Sherry, yes, come tell me, send me an email, get back on the books, and we will go at it. So, all right, what is a good fasting blood sugar if you only get 7 hours of sleep during the work week? You can have a normal fasting blood sugar if you're only getting 7 hours of sleep. 7 hours of sleep isn't the worst thing I've ever heard. Yeah, I think that I mean, like I would expect that your blood sugar would eventually drop. Mine, I get 7 hours of sleep a lot during the work week, and my fasting blood sugar is 80 to 90 most days. So hopefully that answers that question. All right, guys, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm happy to answer anything. And I hope you have a great new year and I hope you reach all your health goals. And if there is anything that I can do to help you along that way, just let me know. All right, we'll talk later.